Trumbo is the 2015 biographical movie about Dalton Trumbo, a Hollywood screenwriter. Set during the 1950s, Dalton Trumbo is an extremely successful screenwriter at the start of the film. He's working with the best, and everyone wants him to write their next film. He has a loving wife and 3 children, but there's one dark speck in Dalton Trumbo's otherwise sunny existence. He's a member of the U.S. Communist Party. Before continuing, there does need to be a little history background in which the movie doesn't really go into. The 1950s was the decade of the Second Red Scare, better known as McCarthyism. Senator Joseph McCarthy spearheaded character investigations of alleged American communists in order to find any and all communist traitors that had infiltrated the U.S. government. While the movie shows some historical footage of Senator McCarthy, he barely shows up at all, and instead the viewers are left thinking that everyone in the American public hated communists and were completely irrational. I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's get back to the movie. Trumbo isn't just a member of the Communist Party. He's an active member within the party. He speaks at rallies, and he hands out pamphlets. They don't seem to be gaining a lot of ground, especially with the Hollywood elite. Things aren't so bad for Trumbo and his family at first, and we get to see a nice family dynamic, although the movie does a rather ham-fisted job of oversimplifying communism to Trumbo's daughter, if I'm being perfectly honest. The movie sets a nice tone for what is personally at stake for Trumbo as things start to turn against him. Hollywood's, and hence the public's shift against Trumbo, is hinted at with the footage of the Rosenberg sentencing of the death penalty for selling nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union, which was, in fact, an actual event that happened. Others' tolerance for Trumbo's political beliefs start to change from barely tolerated to outright hostility. John Wayne is this movie's poster boy for the bigoted ignoramus, and his character is handled with as much care as a cardboard box, which is a shame because Trumbo is a movie of great characters. Because of Trumbo's membership in the Communist Party, he and 9 other screenwriters who are also members of the Communist Party are subpoenaed by the House Committee on Un-American Activities. That there is such a committee blows my mind, but then again, this is Congress, and it goes to show things haven't changed that much. These writers and other communist Hollywoodites gather at each other's homes to plan out their moves prior to the hearings. They realize the cards are stacked against them. In these scenes, which take place throughout the entire film, are some of the strongest as we really get to connect with some of the other characters. The best of which is Louis C.K.'s Arlen Hurd, a crass idealist who is never afraid to say what is on his mind. Trumbo, Hurd, and the other writers plan not to answer Congress's questions directly, believing that their convictions of contempt of Congress will be overturned by the liberal majority in the Supreme Court. At first, everything seems to be going according to plan when 2 of the liberal justices pass away unexpectedly, thus eliminating any chance of their convictions being overturned. The departure scene with his family was particularly moving, with Trumbo telling each of his kids what they needed to do while he was gone, such as telling his son to make sure that their mom smiled every day. Hurd manages to get out of his prison sentence since he has lung cancer. But what happens to the other 8 writers? The movie fails to tell us anything about them for the rest of the movie, preferring to keep its focus upon Trumbo and Hurd. I understand you can only have so much focus on so many characters, but still, we don't hear anything about these other writers at all, period, end of story. There is one great scene while Trumbo is in prison that reveals even Trumbo can be guilty of judging a book by its cover, as he assumes an African-American prisoner can't read simply because he signs an order receipt with an X. When the prisoner shows that he can read just fine, he gives a colorful butt chewing to Trumbo, which delivers in one of the few humorous parts of the movie. Actor Edward G. Robinson betrays the imprisoned Trumbo, testifying before Congress and giving up names of conspirators to the communist cause. While this scene delivers on the emotional payload of betrayal, in reality, Edward Robinson never named anyone, let alone Trumbo, as a communist while he testified before Congress. Instead of the truth, we are now given a former friend who sold out to save himself motif to add extra tension to the story, as Robinson and Trumbo do end up meeting face to face later in the movie. Trumbo gets out of prison 11 months later, but you couldn't tell that by how the kids appeared to have aged about 3 or 4 years since the last time we've seen them. But nonetheless, the reunion is touching, although the movie magic is a little less compelling. Since he's still blacklisted, he has to resort to selling his manuscript for the screenplay of Roman Holiday to a friend who has not yet been subpoenaed by Congress. Roman Holiday ultimately wins the Academy Award for Best Screenplay, but more importantly, Trumbo's family is fed and has a roof over their heads. But the success of Roman Holiday can't feed Trumbo's family forever. They're forced to sell their ranch and move to the city, where the only work Trumbo can find is writing scripts under more fake names for atrocious B movies produced by the King brothers. John Goodman plays as one of the King brothers and delivers on my favorite scene in the movie when he's trying to be intimidated to fire Trumbo. It's crass, but it's perfect John Goodman performance. The performances really carry this movie. Bryan Cranston has been universally acclaimed for his portrayal of Trumbo, and he really deserves it, but being honest, everyone in the supporting cast does a fantastic job as well, and their performances smooth out all the little bumps this movie goes through. After John Goodman's scene, everything becomes a little foreseeable in the story, unfortunately. Dalton Trumbo writes another brilliant screenplay that wins an Academy Award he cannot claim, this time because he uses a pseudonym as opposed to selling it to someone else. His family relationships become strained as he turns his home into a family business in order to make ends meet, and Trumbo recruits Heard and other communist screenwriters to work for the King brothers in an attempt to undermine the blacklist. And suspicion that Trumbo wrote the screenplay for an Academy Award-winning movie only increases and becomes the continuing motif as the movie progresses. Out of all these developments, the only one that has really interesting aspects to it is how Heard and Trumbo end up ending their friendship as Heard realizes that Trumbo wrongfully believes that he is writing scripts only as a political statement, when in fact he is just doing it for the money. Heard is the pure idealist. He is dirt poor because of his convictions, and he is not willing to let himself be deluded to think that he is striking some great blow for his cause just because he writes a script for a movie that gets produced. As opposed to coming off as being a sanctimonious idealist, Louis C.K.'s solid portrayal of Heard comes off as a likable enough everyman who is firmly grounded in reality. Heard ultimately becomes the martyr of the film, as he is unwilling to compromise in any way in order to keep his pure vision of the future he is fighting for. The film portrays Heard and his passions in an understated way, so it never gets overbearing, unlike some of the other points the film tries to make. Now nearing the end, the film becomes easy to predict, with Kirk Douglas serving as the dashing White Knight. As an aside, the makeup crew did a wonderful job trying to make Dean O'Gorman look like a young Kirk Douglas. They did a fantastic job. Really great. Douglas, he wants Trumbo to work on the screenplay for Spartacus. Yes, we're talking about the Spartacus movie. Trumbo, at the same time, is also recruited by director Otto Preminger to write a script for him. While the Hollywood elites try to get Douglas to drop Trumbo, Trumbo realizes his mistakes with his family and makes up to his wife and oldest daughter. Sorry, son and second daughter. Daddy Trumbo only got so much time when he's trying to stick the final dagger into the blacklist's heart. You're gonna have to go cry on someone else's shoulder. With Douglas doubling down, the pressure only increases, as there are pickets and protests as Spartacus is released in theaters nationwide. However, as we all know, Spartacus is successful, and even the President of the United States ends up endorsing it. With that endorsement, the death knell for the blacklist has been rung, and Trumbo has emerged victorious. Of course, the movie has to end with a speech about the evils of the blacklist and how many victims it made and the damage that was done. Trumbo, in the end, is turned into a martyr for the First Amendment, when in fact the real Trumbo supported the murderous and suppressive regimes for Stalin, Chairman Mao, and Kim Il-sung. It seems to be an odd move by the movie to make a martyr out of someone who supported regimes who never would support anything close to the First Amendment. Of course, all the points I brought up doesn't mean I don't like the movie. I like the movie very much. But you can tell the movie allowed beliefs and agendas to get ahead of a good story. There is a good story to be told in Trumbo, a warning that we continue not to heed and need to be reminded of. While the movie may portray Trumbo, Hurd, and everyone else associated with the Communist Party as paragons of virtue, especially by linking it with the Civil Rights Movement, the fact remains clear that the blacklist never truly died. It just changed forms. Trumbo shows a way how such prejudices can be defeated by sheer determination, graciousness in all things, and by working in unconventional ways. All these things are good messages that need to be told. But in Trumbo the movie, it does the exact same thing the blacklisters in the 50s did, demonizing the opposition. And that definitely dulls the sheen of an expertly written and acted film. Judging by the fact that Trumbo flopped at the box office while still garnering mostly positive criticism makes me believe that I'm not too far out from my assessment from the film. If this film encourages people to brush up on their history, I am all for that. But all too often, people don't take the time to do so, and so fact and fiction become blurred. Something I honestly don't think the filmmakers would mind a whole bunch, considering that they rewrote actual historical dialogue to further their narrative. And that's a bit unforgivable. All in all, Trumbo is a pretty decent film. The writing is snappy and poignant, the acting brilliant, and the cast of characters are enjoyable to watch, even the ones you don't like. There is a good message within Trumbo. You just have to sort out the fluff from the actual substance. The agenda of the film really hurts the enjoyableness of the watching experience, but not enough to ruin the movie when the writing and acting is so strong. Just a note to some viewers out there, there also is a fair amount of choice language, so just keep that in mind before you pick up the film. Another aside, I personally hope never, ever, ever again to see Bryan Cranston without a shirt on. Please, no more of that. So if seeing shirtless old men scare you, you might want to watch a different film. But in all seriousness, if you take Trumbo with a grain of salt, you'll find it an enjoyable enough movie with a good universal message set in time that we can all learn from. So did you watch Trumbo and get some of the same feelings I did, or was I completely off base? Go ahead, leave something in the comment section. I really like the interaction. Subscribe and like if you feel like it. That would be greatly appreciated. I enjoy making these reviews, and I hope to keep making them for your enjoyment. They are going to be more in-depth, kind of just as the title says, kind of philosophical reviews. We're gonna be going into it. There's going to be spoilers. So I hope you enjoyed the first review and this new line of reviews. This is the OutcastWriter. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And just remember that what we create matters.